Hello, those of you popping in. I see you guys coming on in nice and quick. So do me a favor, we're going to give it a couple minutes just to let everybody get logged in. If you would, I would love you to introduce yourself in the chat box. This is Amanda Kendall, by the way. But if you would introduce yourself in the chat box, and I would like to know your name, where you're coming in from, and then also the one question I would like you to ask, because it's going to help me really gear this towards everybody specifically, is did you qualify for PPP funds based on having W-2 wages with employees, or did you qualify for PPP funds based on being self-employed? We are going to be covering both today, but I would love to know how you qualified just so I can make sure that I'm gearing this towards the majority of the audience tonight. So Robert from Louisiana, is that Ponchatoula? I think I might have said that right. Very awesome. Thanks for popping in, Robert. We've got Mike from Phoenix, qualified as self-employed. Hi, Harlan. Harlan is a dear friend of mine, and him and I have been bouncing stuff back and forth on this PPP thing for, well, months now. We've got Rebecca from Illinois. Thanks for popping in. All right, so we're going to give it just a minute and then we're going to get started. I do want to honor your guys' time. My goal is to be through this within an hour for you guys. However, a lot of that is going to depend on how many questions you guys have. So you'll notice we have the chat box and then we also have Q&A. So I'm just going to ask that you try and keep questions specifically in the Q&A box so that I can address those, and then the chat box for just communicating back and forth. So give me just a moment here. I am going to be sharing this out on Facebook here. So let me get that going and then we will get started here. All right, so for those of you that haven't introduced yourself, please go ahead and do so. Let me know if you qualified as self-employed or as an employer with W-2 wages. That's going to be very helpful for me. All right, let's get going here. Okay, so you guys should be able to see my screen. I'm just moving a couple things around on my computer here so I can see all of your questions as you're popping those in. For those of you joining us on Facebook, we are talking PPP Forgiveness success tips today. We're going to be going over the 3508 forms, the calculations that you need to have to be able to fill these out, whether or not you qualify for the easy form or if you have to use the expanded form. Rebecca, qualified based on employees, thank you. If you are popping in on Facebook, I would like to know if you qualified for PPP based on having employees and W-2 wages, or if you qualified based on self-employed. We are going to be covering both this evening. All right, so let's get going here. All right, so today we are going to cover the recent changes to the PPP. How those have come through. We've seen a lot of those even just here in the last couple weeks. We're going to go over the form 3508 and the 3508 EZ. If you can qualify for the EZ form, you definitely want to use this one. It's definitely a lot easier to fill out. We're going to discuss how you qualify and apply for forgiveness with employees and W-2 wages, and then also how you qualify being self-employed owner without any W-2 wages and just having the Schedule C. So, all right, we've got Lorena from Flagstaff, an independent contractor. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be covering both of these today, guys. All right, so let's go ahead. All right. Okay, I think I've got all my technology working now. All right, so my name is Amanda Kendall. I am an enrolled agent. I'm the founder of Elevating Profits, LLC. I have been in the accounting and tax industry for over 17 years, actually going on closer to 18 and 17 at this point now. I have done over 150 hours of research, navigating, talking to colleagues, and really understanding everything around the CARES Act, specifically related to the PPP. That's really where a lot of my focus has been. There's a lot that came through on the CARES Act, but the PPP and the EIDL funds have really been my focus for my clients that I work with. I am a multi-entrepreneur. I am a business owner. I'm in the trenches. I totally get as a business owner what we're all going through here. I've seen it. I've dealt with it not only in my multiple businesses, but also with my clients. with friends, with family. Like, we've all been navigating this, so I truly understand everything going on here. For those of you, we've had a couple people pop in late, so please make sure as we're going through this, if you have questions, I do want you to please pop those into the Q&A box. If you are on Zoom, if you are on Facebook, please pop it into the questions there. I am watching both of these to be able to answer those questions, and I will do my best to answer all of those, but I'm also going to do my best to try and keep this to an hour. All right, so we have seen many changes to the rules of the PPP funds that came out early in June. So prior to June, when this initially came out in the CARES Act, we had an 8-week period that you were allowed to use the PPP funds. That extended June 5th to 24 weeks or December 31st, whichever is first. So if you're just now applying for the PPP, since they reopened it and you can actually apply through the beginning of August now. So if you're just now applying, you may not have that full 24 weeks depending on when you get approved. So you're going to need to make sure that you understand that it's 24 weeks or December 31st, whichever falls first. Now, if you received your loans before they made this change, which was on June 3rd, you can elect to utilize the 8-week window if you used all the funds and you qualify, or you can utilize the 24-week window. So you just want to really run the calculations and see what's going to be working best for you. Before June 3rd, we had a requirement to use 75% for payroll costs. That has now dropped down to 60%. This is huge for a lot of people, specifically restaurant owners, which I know we have a couple on here this evening. For anybody that wasn't able to fully open, or that, you know, coronavirus just really impacted your business and you got the PPP funds, but you weren't really able to utilize all of them for payroll, and you were worried that you would be facing a situation where you'd end up having a loan on this, this drop down to 60% is going to really give you some additional flexibility for planning and using these funds. So if you received your loan before June 3rd, your loan paperwork with the bank says that anything that is not forgiven is going to default to a 2-year loan term. That changed on June 3rd to 5-year loan term. Now, if you signed your agreement showing that you had a 2-year loan term, you can call your bank when you get ready to go through the forgiveness process. If you don't have a portion that is going to be forgiven, then you can talk to your banker, and most of them that I've talked to have advised that they are willing to adjust this to a 5-year loan term. You just have to be proactive and do that. Michael asks, for those that applied before June 3rd, is there something we need to do to extend to 12/31? It is, that piece of it is going to be automatic. The 8 weeks versus the 24 weeks is going to be automatic. So if you received your funds at the very early phases of this, that 24 weeks is not going to take you through to December 31st. So you just need to calculate out from the day that your loan originated, what is that 24-week window? But that piece of it is automatic. The piece that is not is that 2-year or 5-year loan term there. All right, so safe harbor, the rehire provisions. There was a lot of those rehire provisions that were going to expire June 30th. And I apologize if you guys can hear my crazy dog in the background. There were a lot of those that were going to expire June 30th. That has now extended to December 31st as well. So the additional guidance that came out on June 3rd has really allowed us to adjust some of these things and be able to work with some of these business owners, such as yourselves, that may not have been able to get everybody back to work right away. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail on that here in a minute. FTE, full-time equivalent employees, there's been some exemptions for that. Some of these provisions are going to cover the inability to rehire an employee, the inability to hire someone at the same qualified level of an employee that may not have returned, the inability to return to the same level of business due to COVID restrictions on business. So if you have, there's a lot of my clients that we've been dealing with this where they've had employees that, you know, pardon me, that maybe on the unemployment benefits, they were making more money with that pandemic unemployment assistance. And so they opted to stay on unemployment instead of returning to work. And this has impacted their ability to hit that 60% on the PPP funds for payroll usage. So looking at hiring someone else, well, maybe that someone else isn't as qualified, or they come in at a lower paid rate than what you were paying before. So there's some stipulations here for that. Let me see. All right, Lorena, safe harbor does not apply to self-employed. Yes, so if you're self-employed filing on a Schedule C, the safe harbor is not necessarily going to apply to you. And I'm going to cover why in a minute, because realistically being self-employed, you can use 100. If you are self-employed and the calculations were done right for the 2.5 times your average monthly quote unquote payroll, there is no reason being self-employed that you shouldn't be able to have this 100% forgiven based on that. All right, the one thing I do want to clarify here is that inability to return to the same level of business due to COVID restrictions. This does not mean, what we've been seeing on this is people are saying, well, you know, my client base just hasn't returned, or people aren't needing my services as often as they were before. That unfortunately is not one of the provisions here. The provisions specifically cover based on health guidelines as far as social distancing or things like that. Those type of things have to have impacted your ability to complete business, not just clients aren't returning. Payments, so repayments on any portion that is not going to be forgiven are now deferred until the SBA approves the forgiveness application or 10 months after your covered period ends. Your covered period ends at that 24-week mark or December 31st. So if you have any portion of this that is going to be unforgiven, you could potentially be looking at a situation where you may not have to make payments on this, on any unforgiven portion, until late 2021. The deadline to apply for forgiveness has been clarified as 10 months after the last day of the recovery period. This was previously not defined in the CARES Act, and this came out with our June 3rd updates. So if your 24-week period takes you through the end of the year, December 31st is your last day, you effectively have until October of next year to apply for forgiveness, which is a good thing, because just as we saw when the PPP came out, we don't have a lot of banks that are ready to start accepting the forgiveness applications, because they're still working through this process with the SBA and what it looks like and what are their obligations and those types of things. So just know that if your bank's not ready, it's not an emergency right now to get this in. You obviously want to do it sooner rather than later, but a lot of the banks are not ready to accept yet. So this is huge, and I will drop a link in here. Let me actually pull that up right now. There is a portion, or there's a tax deferral piece that came out in the CARES Act, and initially you were not able to use this once you qualified for the PPP loan, but that has now been changed, and you can qualify for this even if you get the PPP loan forgiven. So I am going to be dropping in a link on that here in just a second, so that you can go watch a training video on that if you have some questions on that. I am dropping that in. All right, that just went into the chat box. So if you guys want to look at some of that, make sure to grab that link so that you can take a look at that. So let's go over these changes a little bit more, and then we're going to dive into applying for the forgiveness, which is actually why you guys are all here. So there was that shift from the 8 weeks to 24 weeks. This is going to allow you to pay each employee more of these funds and still qualify. The way this is going to work is when we were looking at an 8-week window, the maximum compensation you could pay any one employee and have it forgiven was $15,385. This is based off that $100,000 cap that you can't have employees' allowable payroll costs under the PPP exceeding $100,000 annually. So when we were dealing with 8 weeks, that was $15,385. Now that we've been able to extend this to 24 weeks, now the maximum compensation that you can pay an employee in that 24 weeks is $46,154. So this allows you to really utilize it to the best of the benefit for your business as well as for your employees. So how do you choose the 8-week or the 24-week method? Because there's going to be some pros and cons to both, and so you really need to look at which one's better for your business, and we're going to go through this a little bit. So if it took you a little longer than anticipated to fully reopen your business, sorry, I had to grab a drink there, guys. If it took you a little longer to fully reopen your business, then you're going to want to maybe look at utilizing the 24-week option there. If you had staff not come back after reopening, then you're going to want to look at the 24-week option, because that's going to allow you to replace that staff or to get them back in when they feel comfortable with all the health regulations. If you received other grants that were used for some of the allowable expenses. So I'm based out of Colorado. I know there's been a lot of counties nationwide that have done this, but I can specifically speak to Colorado. We've had a lot of local county governments put out grants that have allowed business owners to cover, you know, a month or two of their lease payments or rent payments to their landlord. That they covered that. Well, that's an allowable expense under PPP, but if you get a grant for it, you cannot turn around and then use the PPP funds for it. So you really had to balance that out. Well, when we were running through these calculations with some of our clients, we're like, okay, like, this is going to result, if we're looking at this 8-week window, like, we may have a portion of this that's not forgiven because we're not going to be able to use it. Now that we have that 24 weeks, now we've gone back and we've ran the numbers again, and we're going to be able to get 100% forgiveness on this because of that extension to those 24 weeks. If you didn't use the 60%, this was 75%, but now it's 60. If you didn't use 60% in the 8-week window, then you have the ability to come back and now use it within that 24-week window and get full forgiveness. With more time, you can have more forgiven. Obviously, with more time, you're going to be spending more expenses. So make sure that you're just tracking this, and if you can use everything in the 8-week window and you can have it all forgiven based on an 8-week window, then go ahead and utilize the 8-week window and get your forgiveness application in once the bank opens up. But if not, take advantage of the longer time frame, use the funds in the way they were intended to be used, get the forgiveness application put in, and get 100% of it forgiven. So we've had the shift from the 75% to 60% payroll cost requirements. We've touched on that a little bit already. That 2-year loan term on the unforgivable amount is now, if you applied and received funds after June 5th, it's an automatic 5-year loan term. If you applied and received funds prior to that, then you are going to just want to talk to your bank or the lender that actually processed the PPP funds for you and make sure that you go back to negotiate, if you have any piece of this that is not going to be forgiven, that you negotiate that to a 5-year term if that's something you want. However, I will say, if you use these funds properly in the way they were intended, and if the calculations were all done correctly, I've yet to come across the business where we're not going to have 100% forgiven, and I have helped, I lost track, but we've helped over 100 businesses through this process, and I've not come across one yet that I can say is not getting 100% forgiveness on this, especially now that we've had these shifts. So we already talked about this. You have to negotiate that with the bank. The deadline to hire back your full-time equivalent employees is now December 31st, not June 30th. So this gives you, again, that wiggle room that before we're past June 30th. So if you hadn't brought your FTE up to the same level it was at when you applied for the PPP, then you were going to end up with a portion of this not being forgiven because there's an FTE requirement piece of the forgiveness application. So this is now December 31st, which is helping a lot of our business owners. This is one of the shifts that we've had that has really allowed us to push those last few through that we were really worried about not having all of it forgiven. That with this, we've now been able to push through and get 100% forgiveness calculations ran for them. So let's talk about the FTEs. When I was putting this, that I was doing this webinar out, I had so many people ask specifically about this piece of things. And so I want to make sure that we cover that because it's a big piece of the forgiveness application. So what is an FTE? Let's go over that and make sure we're really clear. It's very simple, but I want to make sure it's very clear. Every employee who works at least 40 hours per week equals 1 full-time equivalent employee. So what you need to be aware of here is that 1 employee with OT, with overtime, is still only 1 FTE. Whether they work 50 or 60 hours a week, it still only qualifies as 1 if it's 1 person. Part-time employees, you accumulate them to get to a full-time equivalent. So if you have 3 employees that work 20 hours a week, they equal 1.5 full-time equivalent employees. So just make sure that you're looking at that because that is part of the calculation here. So the forgiven amount is reduced if you don't maintain the full-time equivalent. Again, you have through December 31st now instead of June 30th to hit this window, but you want to make sure that that forgiven piece is going through or that the FTEs are matching on what you submitted on your application, what you're submitting on your forgiveness application. So you're going to want to analyze the 8-week versus the 24-week options. you're going to want to take a look at the safe harbor regulations that we just covered based on employee availability. So if you have, like I said, if you have employees that PUA was a better option for them and they chose to go that route because they were making more money, or they chose to go that route because they weren't comfortable coming back to work with everything going on, whatever that situation is, if you have some employee availability, you have some safe harbor rules there that you're going to want to take a look at and make sure you're utilizing those. Same thing with the safety regulations. The application deadline, again, is 10 months after the end of the covered period to apply, so you can keep an eye on that time frame for you. And you are also eligible for the payroll tax deferral. So again, I dropped a link in the comments in Zoom, and I'm dropping it in Facebook now for those of you watching over there, that will give you a link to a training I did specifically on the payroll tax deferral piece. So if you have questions on that, if you think you may want to utilize that in addition to the PPP, definitely make sure that you take a look at that training video, and you can reach out with any questions as well. So if you have a full-time equivalent decline, let's talk about what might happen, or sorry, we're going to talk about what would happen, cause you to not receive forgiveness. So full-time equivalent decline, that's going to give you a drop in your forgiveness piece if you don't qualify under either of the safe harbor regulations there. If you use less than 60% for your payroll costs, that's going to result in you having a piece of this not forgiven. So you really want to understand what that 60% threshold is for you. Improper record keeping that results in an inability to substantiate the cost. This could result in not having some of this forgiven. And we're going to go over what those records that you're going to be wanting to gather up and get in order are going to be before you submit the application. So let's get into that. What documentation do you need? So they're going to be looking for three specific things, and all banks are going to vary slightly. I've talked to a couple that are asking for some additional information beyond what's on here, and I've talked to a couple that are like, no, we only need this and this and this. So they're going to be looking at three key areas. It's payroll documents, non-payroll documents, and your full-time equivalent documents. So the payroll documents that they're going to be looking for that you can use to substantiate are going to be third-party payroll reports. So whether you use ADP, Paychex, Gusto, QuickBooks, Patriot, whatever payroll software you use, you can print out and pull reports out of here to be able to go in and pull those records that you're going to need to substantiate these costs. You are going to have your payroll tax forms, depending on your time frame of when you got the PPP and when your forgiveness is. You may have some 941s and your state forms that will allow you to do this. Lorena, I see your question there. We are going to cover that here in just a moment, so hang tight with me, and we are going to go into a lot of detail on how to do this when you do owner draws. Okay, so canceled checks or bank statements, if you offer benefits to your staff, if you offer health insurance or retirement benefits, you're going to want to be able to provide proof that those were paid by either canceled checks, statements from the vendor, so whether that's the health insurance company or the retirement provider that you go through, whatever that looks like, then you're going to take a look at that. Michael, I see your question. Can you tell me, you're self-employed, so you don't necessarily pay yourself on an actual paycheck as a W-2. Please confirm if that is correct, and then I will come back to your question as well. Non-payroll documents. So a couple of the items that were allowed under PPP expenses is business utilities. So you're going to want, whether this is electricity, phone, trash, whatever those utilities are, where are the invoices? Get the invoices showing the bill and showing that you paid. Okay, Michael, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute. We're going to cover that when we get to the self-employed forgiveness piece of this. So hang tight with me, Michael and Lorraine. I'm going to answer both of those in just a moment. So lease agreement. Lease for business property that you were leasing prior to February 15th. You can have monthly rent payments as part of your forgivable expenses. So you'll want a copy of the lease agreement. The reason they're wanting this is because they need to know that when the lease went into effect, and you'll want to provide canceled checks or bank statements showing where those payments were paid, statement from the landlord, whatever that looks like. If you have a mortgage and you are covering your mortgage interest with PPP expenses, and this is a business mortgage, this is a commercial mortgage, this is not your personal mortgage. If you're self-employed and you work out of your home, That's not here. This is specifically for a commercial mortgage. You can cover that interest portion. So you're going to want a lender amortization schedule for the mortgage paid. You may need to reach out to your mortgage lender and ask them specifically for a statement showing what you paid in interest over the window that you're looking at dealing with this in. So other interest payments made during the covered period. Again, if you paid it using PPP expenses or PPP funds and it's an allowable PPP expense, make sure that you're getting the documentation. That is the biggest thing here. All right, so FTE documents, what are they looking for here? This could be third-party payroll reports showing the number of employees. So you'll want to get this for at the time that you submitted the application with what that was, and then at the time that you, through the covered period. So getting those third-party payroll reports to show who you were paying on payroll, how many employees, were they full-time equivalents, were there multiple part-timers that equated to a full-time equivalent, taking a look at that. Unemployment reports showing numbers of employees. Again, this is going to be based on your covered window, what that looks like, and did you actually file a report during that window that's going to allow you to do this. So making sure, again, with all of this documentation, guys, my honest answer is there's no such thing as too much. If you think it's going to help your case, save it, get it gathered up, get it ready to provide. Pay stubs for employees from before and during the PPP period. This is going to help substantiate that you didn't change wages, because that's part of the FTE requirement, is that you can't drop wages more than 25% for your employees. So making sure that you're looking at this, and that's wages or hours. So making sure that you have these pay stubs to verify those things. Again, if you think it's going to help your case, get it together and gather it. So now we're going to go over these applications. So there's a 3508 and a 3508EZ. I will tell you, I have walked through both of them multiple times this week. And if you can get the 35, if you qualify to use the EZ form, use it. It is so much simpler. I think we were filling those ones out in, like, 10, 15 minutes once we had all the information gathered up. The actual form 3508, I think the quickest one we did took us about 35 to 45 minutes. It's definitely a lot more in depth, a lot more calculations. So if you can use the EZ form, which we're going to cover how you qualify for that here in just a moment, make sure that you use the EZ form. So you have to meet one of 3 requirements. You do not have to meet all 3 of these. You have to meet one of the 3. So if you are self-employed and you do not have any employees, so this means you file on a Schedule C, you are the only person that takes money out of the business as a quote-unquote employee, and you do not pay any W-2 wages. So Michael, Lorena, you guys have asked questions. These are specifically for you guys. Like, you guys will qualify for the EZ form here. So make sure that you're doing this. Yes, Harlan, thank you for pointing that out. Going back to the, let me back up a couple slides here. So the FTE documents, remember I said you're going to need pay stubs from employees. You cannot take an employee that was making, let's say you had an employee that was making $4,000 a month. You cannot give them a substantial raise, like doubling their income, to get to the 60%. So thanks for pointing that out, Harlan. I did forget to mention that. So you do need to make sure that you're not decreasing wages, but you also can't give them a substantial increase in wages without just cause to meet 60%. All right, so back to the three requirements. Thank you, Harlan. I appreciate you being on here for those reasons right there. Self-employed and you don't have any employees, you qualify for the EZ form. You did not reduce payroll hours or wages by more than 25%. You qualify for the EZ form. You experienced reductions in business. I don't know why that was hard to say. As a result of COVID guidelines, and you did not reduce wages by more than 25%. So the EZ form, the main thing to think of here is you're self-employed, you don't file W-2s, you qualify, you're in there. If you did not reduce payroll hours or wages, then you should qualify for the EZ form. So make sure that you're looking, when you pull up the EZ form, it's got those questions right at the front of the application that's going to allow you to see that. Lorena, tell me how your business is structured. Are you an S corporation? I'm curious to know, because that's going to make a difference on my answer to you there. All right, so it is the borrower's responsibility to provide an accurate calculation for the forgiveness amount. And sorry, this cut off a little bit here and I just now realized it. The bank is not required to verify. They are only required to perform a good faith review. So this means that when you fill out these forgiveness applications, you are certifying that these funds were used properly, and then the bank has to make this decision within 60 days of you submitting the application as to whether or not they're going to offer forgiveness. This 60-day window allows them enough time to go to the SBA with the documentation that they have to submit over there, get the SBA approval for forgiveness, and then turn around and issue the forgiveness approval to you. So make sure that when you're certifying this, I've been saying it since all of this started a while ago, guys, that I think 2020 is going to end up being one of the most highly audited tax years that we have ever seen. I think that's going to be for multiple reasons, but I think a lot of it is going to be because of everything with these funds. The fact that, you know, these PPP expenses are not tax deductible, so you have to make sure they're getting on your books correctly. The fact that, you know, you have to be certifying these funds, and so there's a potential for this down the road in order for the IRS to come back and look at a lot of this. So just make sure that you're keeping phenomenal records on this. If you have questions on, I use QuickBooks Online. That's the software that I'm most familiar with. That's the one we use with all our clients. If you have questions on how to record this in QuickBooks, as far as, because you need these expenses on your books, but you don't want them to be hitting the final profit and loss at the end of the year, then the link that I just now dropped into the chat on Zoom and then the comments on Facebook, that is a video on how to record these expenses in QuickBooks. So if you use QuickBooks, make sure you grab that link so that you have that there. All right, so let's go through these applications. And before you start these applications, there's a few things you're going to want, and a lot of this you can get from your bank. You need the SBA and the lender PPP loan numbers. You need the PPP loan amount and the disbursement date. Again, your PPP lender can give you all of those dates and numbers. You need to know when you filled out the PPP application that what was that full-time equivalent at that point? What is it at the time that you're submitting the application for forgiveness? Did you get an idle advance? What was that application number? What's your payroll schedule, your covered period? These are all things that are asked on the 3508 application. So you want to make sure that you have these questions because they're going to be part of that. So this is the form. So there are all those questions right there. You can see the PPP loan number there, loan amount, disbursement date, employees at the time of the FTE, time of forgiveness, or sorry, FTE at time of application, at time of forgiveness application, all of this. So you want to make sure you have all of that. All of this stuff that you are providing to your lender, if you're giving it to them in person, I'm going to highly encourage you to make a copy of everything you're submitting to them and keep it for your records, because that way, if the SBA ever wants to verify, if the IRS ever comes back to look at anything, you have all of these records nice and neat. Document, document, document. So the 3508EZ, let's take a look at that one first. Did I? Nope, I didn't. Okay. All right, so this is without payroll, self-employed. So Michael, this is going to be for you. We're going to be getting to your questions in this specific piece right here. Lorena, let me look at your question really quick. Okay, so Lorena, we may want to have a sidebar chat, you and I, about the forgiveness piece because of how they did that, and making sure that you can utilize the funds. So I'll come back to your questions towards the end and we'll specifically address those. And if we have time and you can hang out, I'll even bring you on and allow you to talk and we can kind of work through that because I know there's probably other people that have that same question. All right, so the 3508EZ. This is owner compensation replacement value is going to be the first thing you're looking at on line 1. So this is 2.5 times your net income on your 2019 Schedule C. It cannot exceed $20,833.33. So this is, if your lender did this correctly, which I will be very honest with you, we've come across people that applied with banks on their own and the calculation was extremely off, and we've been scrambling. And we were super excited when it extended to 24 weeks because now we're like, okay, now we can qualify because the bank did this wrong, and good for you, but you got too much money and it wasn't all going to be forgiven. So making sure that you're looking at that and addressing those pieces of it. All right, so this is like, anytime you see these here, guys, this is literally just, I copied and pasted this off the application. So if you're looking at the 3508EZ, this is absolutely what you're going to see right there. So line 1, your payroll costs, that is going to be that owner compensation replacement value that we just talked about. If you have mortgage interest, rent or lease, business utility payments, go ahead and list those here. Again, we've already talked about what those are. If you have any questions on that, go ahead and pop those in the comments and we will talk about those. All right, so that's that page again. So line 5 on the application, you're just adding up those lines that we just took a look at. Line 6 is going to be your PPP loan amount, and you'll see this here in a second. And then line 7 is going to be line 1 divided by 0.6, which gets you that 60%. So right here, line 5, you're going to add up all those expenses, your payroll costs or your owner compensation replacement value. You're going to add up the business mortgage interest, the utilities, the business lease. You're going to add those items up and put them here on line 5. You're going to list out your PPP loan amount, and then you're going to take that line 1 and figure out that line 6, the PPP loan amount, and figure out what 60% of that is. So if you received a PPP loan for 100,000, 60% is going to be 60,000. That these 3 lines here, between lines 5, 6, and 7, this right here is going to help you determine your forgiveness amount. Line 8 is simply the smallest of one of those 3. That's the forgiveness amount. Ideally, you want that to be the PPP loan amount. And so make sure that you're looking at this. Again, it's just the smallest of those 3. If you utilize the 24-week period, so Michael, your question about, sorry, it would be divide. So Michael, your question about self-employed. So right here, if you utilize the 24-week period, you can absolutely have 100% of this forgiven with just owner compensation. This is huge for people who file on a Schedule C, because that 2.5 times, when you only had 8 weeks, there was no way you could use 2.5 times your salary in 8 weeks without giving yourself a raise if you didn't have utilities or an office that you rented. A lot of people who file on a Schedule C don't have an office that they rent. And so this was presenting a problem for a lot of self-employed individuals as far as being able to really make sure that they could maximize out this forgiveness. Now that you can extend it that 24 weeks, this should be a shoo-in for anybody filing on a Schedule C that received PPP funds. So now let's take a look at the 3508EZ. And let's say that you have payroll, but you did not have any full-time equivalent reductions. So this is for those of you that are not self-employed. So now we're moving into people that have employees, file W-2s, those types of things. So line 1 is going to be all your eligible payroll expenses. This is going to be gross salary, wages, tips, commissions, paid leave. Again, remember that you cannot exceed $100,000 per year per employee here. Anything above that is automatically excluded for forgiveness piece of this. Eligible payroll expenses are also going to include your employee benefits that are paid by the employer, health insurance, retirement, tax, state and local taxes that you paid. It does not include your federal employer FICA taxes. But that is where the deferral can help you balance that piece of it out. So if you are struggling, if you have a large amount of payroll, you'll definitely want to take a peek at my payroll tax deferral video I did and make sure that you're understanding if you qualify and how you can utilize that. So this piece of the application looks the exact same as the EZ form, or sorry, this is still the EZ form. So we're kind of just reiterating this, and we're going to jump, I'm going to skip ahead here for sake of time. And we are going to go, same calculations here, guys. It's all the same. The only difference is you actually have payroll costs here that you need to calculate out. Let's get into the Form 3508. We're going to spend a little bit more time here, but I'm honestly hoping that there is going to be a lot of people who don't need this form because, like I said, this form is a little bit more intense to get filled out. So you're going to start by completing the Schedule A worksheet first. So when you print this form out, this form is like a 5-page form. And I've actually got it printed out here in front of me because I did one for a client earlier. We were running some projections. And so I just have it sitting here in front of me so I can look at it as well. So you want to start with the Schedule A worksheet. This is going to help you determine if you qualify under the headcount and payment requirements for forgiveness, that whole FTE concept's there. So on this, page 4 of this Form 3508, you have the Schedule A worksheet, and you're going to list out every employee who earned under $100,000 a year on the top piece. It's going to ask their employee identifier. This is literally just the last 4 of their Social Security number. So you're going to list them out here, last 4 of their Social Security number. You're going to put in the cash compensation. This is the wages, the health insurance, all of that compensation piece that you're calculating. Average FTE. Are they working 40 hours a week? They're 1. Are they working 20 hours a week? They're 0.5. Are they working 30 hours a week? They're 0.5. So make sure that you understand that piece of it there. Let me see, Rebecca popped a question in. What if we applied for the loan and received money because we were unsure of our future? However, business is doing great and we technically didn't use the PPP. Yes, so Rebecca, you can use the PPP money and take your revenue that's coming in from the business and hold that aside and still use this. So it can still be forgiven. It's just a matter of utilizing it correctly. And if you have questions on that, we can definitely, if we have time at the end, I can bring you on live and we can kind of talk through that, or we can schedule a call and I can just answer those questions for you there. So again, average FTE, and then taking a look at the salary hourly wage reduction piece of it here, and really understanding, making sure that you're filling this piece out correctly, because this piece right here is going to be one of the biggest indicators that is going to help you understand if you qualify using the Form 3508, because you do have to verify your FTE requirements on this. We've already covered this, that you need to list all compensation there, calculate that FTE based on an average hours of 40 a week. Simple calculation for the FTE. If they're a full-time employee, it's 1. If they're anything under a full-time employee, it's a half. That's the easy way to fill out the average FTE on this form right here in this column. All right, so then you're going to calculate that salary hourly wage reduction, and you need to be able to verify that it wasn't decreased by 25% or that you didn't have any major increases as we discussed earlier. So just really looking at those numbers, working the numbers, and making sure that you didn't drop anybody's hours or wages by 25%. That's going to go in here. So if you didn't, if everybody stayed at their standard hours, standard pay, you're just going to be able to put zeros all the way down, which is what you want to see there ideally. If you didn't have any decrease, check the Form 3508 EZ, because if you didn't have a decrease, you might be able to qualify for the EZ, and I promise you if you qualify for that form, you want to use it, not this one. If there is a decrease, go ahead and enter that in that column there and put your total down in the bottom of box 3. So we're going to cover these again really quick, the FTE reduction exceptions. So you are going to have, there's some check boxes on this form here. Let me get back to them here. So it specifically says full-time equivalency FTE reduction calculation. Your average full-time equivalent between February 15th and April 26th of 2020. They want to know that number. So these are your check boxes here. So you're going to be able to say no reduction in employees or average paid hours. Check. You had an FTE reduction, but it qualifies under Safe Harbor 1. This is that if you were unable to operate between February 15th and the end of the covered period at the same level of business activity as before that, and it is due to complying with requirements established, health guidelines, social distancing, any of those things, you can check this box and you may still qualify based under that Safe Harbor. If you satisfy the Safe Harbor 2, which is going to be on that Schedule A worksheet, you can check here. So you're going to need to check one of those boxes on this piece, and then you need to fill in your average FTE during the borrower's reference period, which is going to be before total average FTE, and then the reduction. So that's all right here. This is that Safe Harbor 2 that will allow you to calculate through that piece of it. I'm telling you guys, if you qualify for the easy form, you want to do it. Like, I've done this. I'm so immersed in all of this CARES Act stuff, and I was working through this, and I had to go back It's the government. The wording on these things is not always clear as to what they're looking for. So I had to go back and reread the instructions on this a couple times the first time I was working through it. And even the second and third time that we were working through this with a couple clients, getting it ready, making sure that we had everything in order, it still like caused me to pause and like go back and look and say, okay, what is this? What is that? And making sure that we've got that in there. So if you qualify for the easy form, by all means, go ahead and do that. So yes, Lorena, the decrease is based on during the covered period. So that's the time that you received the loan through the 8 or 24-week window, whichever you're doing there. Harlan is asking, any info on employees whose normal work week is 35 hours. So everything I've seen so far, and I do have a call into my liaison because we have one client who that is considered full-time for all of their staff. But as of right now, what we're being told is that is still considered just a 0.5 for the FTE if they're not working 40 hours. All right, so let me pick up. All right, so we've covered this Schedule A worksheet, the FTE piece of it. We've done that. We talked about that. Again, this is all just that safe harbor reduction piece. Your total full-time equivalents on the qualifying date need to be greater than or equal to that of your pay period, including February 15th. So the pay period that covered February 15th, so regardless of your pay cycle, whatever pay period February 15th fell into, this is your comparison period that they're looking at for the FTE safe harbor. So you want to make sure that you go back and you look at that pay period to compare. If yes, on this, let me jump back over. And I'm sorry, guys, like, I didn't have a way to actually pull the form up and walk through this. So I apologize if this is kind of bouncing back and forth, but everybody that registered for this has this recording. So it will be sent out to you within the next couple of days, and you'll be able to kind of go through this and pause it as you're working through the forms. On line 13, you're going to have, which is on page 3, it says if you have it, if you enter yes, or you're going to put 1 on line 13 of Schedule A. See, I'm confusing myself right now still, and I've gone through this so many times already. If no, the safe harbor does not apply, and you're going to have to look at lines 11 and 12 on page 3 of this form, which is right here. Again, all of this instruction is here, so you're just going to want to make sure you really carefully walk through this. Again, simple calculation, 1 for a full-time employee at 40 hours or more, and 0.5 for anyone under that. So then once you've completed this Schedule A, which is where you need to start, you're going to then take those numbers and you're going to move over to page 1 of the 3508. This is the full form, and you're going to then go through this and you're going to pull those numbers off of the Schedule A over to the 3508. And this is going to help you calculate through those forgiveness amounts. Your lines 1 through 4 are the same as they were before. We're talking payroll costs, business mortgage interest payments, your business rent or lease payments, and those business utility payments. Those are your lines 1 through 4, same as on the easy application. That piece of it is similar. But then we jump over here. Let me see where we at. Right here. Line 5, your total salary and hourly wage reduction. This is going to come from your Schedule A and those calculations you did over there. Then you're going to take and you're going to add the amounts on line 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are your payroll and non-payroll costs that we just went over. You're going to put those there and subtract that from line 5. Then you're looking at your FTE reduction quotient. This is those things that we just walked through that you have lines 11, 12, and 13 on the Schedule A that are going to help you determine your FTE reduction quotient if you have it. And so you're going to put that number over there. And then I'm going to multiply line 6 by line 7, and that's going to be the amount of your eligible forgiven expenses. All right, so we've touched on, okay, so you have your modified total, which is what we just said. You're going to multiply line 6 by line 7. You're going to drop in your PPP loan amount, figure out that 60%, and then that's the smallest of those 3 lines is what is going to be your forgiveness amount. Again, ideally, you want that smallest number to be line 9, or you want them all to be similar. But line 9 being the smallest means you have 100% forgiveness on this. So we just covered those. I'm skipping through some of these because I'm covering them all in one slide. All right, so those are the forms. Again, guys, I know I ran through that really quick. This is honestly something I'm going to highly recommend that you go and you kind of take a look. You keep this video as you're filling these out and you refer back to it as you're filling out these forms. The payroll tax deferral, which is section 2302 of the CARES Act. Again, this can allow you to defer 100% of your payroll taxes for 2 years. I did drop that YouTube link in there. If you missed that, honestly, just go to YouTube, search for Elevating Profits, and you can pull it up and you'll see it there. It's the payroll deferral and credits video. If you do utilize the deferral, you have 50% of these that are due by December of next year, 2021, and the remaining 50% due by December the following year. So this allows you to defer your payroll tax payments, your employer portion, and 941 allows you to defer that out 2 years. For self-employed, this can allow you to defer out your self-employment tax portion, not your income tax, but your FICA tax. You can defer this out 2 years and not have any penalties for late payment on these. As long as they are paid by those December 31st of 2021 and 2022 dates, they are considered timely and you avoid penalties. So this piece of this right here is a huge cash flow strategy for business owners that we've been utilizing and we've been taking a look at of how do we maximize during this uncertain time, because we don't know. I mean, I've got friends in Florida that said Florida came off their strict quarantine guidelines and like superbly spiked number of cases. A lot of places did over the 4th of July holiday. So we don't know, like, we've started here in Colorado, they've started to close down bars again. And, you know, just really looking at what guidelines need to be put back in place. How is this going to impact your business? You may need to do a lot of cash forecasting and cash flow management over the next several months, maybe even a year or longer to really get through all of this here. Rebecca, I've not come across the fillable form. I'm sure they're out there. I personally just printed them out because when we're filling them out, I've got scribbles and scratches as we're running numbers and looking at different scenarios. And so I just print them out. There probably is a fillable form out there. I have not come across it as of yet. Let me actually look here. I'm pulling up the links for the forms so I can get them in there for you. All right, so this link that I'm dropping in here, both on Zoom and in Facebook, this is for the EZ form. So this one here, again, this is the EZ form. So if you qualify for that, you can download that here. And then I'm going to get the one for the 3508 in here. So these are the links so that they're really, oh, and the 3508 is a fillable form, Rebecca. I don't, it shows as fillable. I've not tested it to make sure it is fillable, but let me see. Yeah, that one is fillable on that link I just put in for the 3508. 3508 EZ, I'm not seeing a fillable one that I was able to just pull up, but you know, that may be them saying, hey, we already made this easy enough. You can print it out and write it. You never know what they're thinking behind all of this, but that second one is a fillable form for you, Rebecca. So we're rounding out the hour here, and so I just want to talk to you really quickly, and then I will make sure to come back and answer some questions. Lorraine, I know you have one that we still want to address. So cash forecasting and budgeting right now is so key and so necessary for businesses. You need to really take a look at survival versus growth during these times. You need to look at how long is your cash going to last before you hit a downward spiral? How long do you need to prepare to have positive cash in your business? Are you facing negative profits already? Is this something that you're dealing with? How do we turn that around? How do we use what is available to us through these government funds to make sure our businesses survive? What is your burn rate? Making sure that you understand that, and then really looking at forecasting and budgeting to extend your survival timeline as long as possible. Couple things I'm going to recommend that you guys all do. First is going to be assess the liquidity of your business. What is available to you in liquid cash assets that you can utilize? Prepare a budget. If you've never done this before, it's pretty simple to do. If you visit my website, elevatingprofits.com, along the top there's useful tools. Click there and you can download a budget spreadsheet that can walk you through the most basic form of this, which everybody needs. You need to calculate your burn rate. If you don't know what burn rate is, it's how quickly you're going through cash. If you bring in $4,000 but you're spending $5,000, you have a negative $1,000. So what is your burn rate? How quickly are you going to burn through the cash that's available to your business? You need to prepare 3 versions of your forecast and your cash flow. You need a realistic, this is what I expect to happen. You need a worst case scenario and you need a best case scenario, so you can see all these scenarios and have your eyes open to them. I want you to ask yourself if your accounting professional is truly a part of your team. How are they helping you see the future of your business? This is something that I think a lot of my colleagues were doing really, really well. I've seen some people not doing really well. Your accounting professional right now through all of this should be your go-to person that can answer any of these questions for you, that is there, they have your back, and your business is a priority for them as well as for you. If you have any questions on anything we've covered today, if you want to set up an appointment, Rebecca, I know you said that we might want to schedule a call, text your name and email to this phone number that I'm going to leave up on the screen here while we wrap up. And I will make sure that we get an email out to you tomorrow. My staff will be sending that out with a link in order to get you a link and get you on the calendar. So if you have questions, about any of this, if you need some assistance with any of this, we are offering assistance to business owners, even if we didn't help them through the PPP process, to make sure that they're getting the forgiveness piece of this taken care of. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those into the chat. I am going to pop over on Facebook. I don't think I've seen anything over there that I haven't answered. So I think we're okay over there. Hey, Ben, I see you over on Facebook. Thanks for joining. Okay, so Lorena, drop into the chat box for me if you are willing to come on and speak with me on here so we can work through your question, because this is not the first time I've seen this question, and I would love to answer this, but I think my answers will be more effective if you are asking some additional questions. Okay, Lorena, I am going to allow you to talk, so I'm hitting that button now. Hi, I hear you.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
All right, so let's walk through this. So your specific, actually, right now, I'm going to have you tell everybody what your question was in your own words.
Sure. Last year, I did owner draws through my business, and I had independent contractors working for me. But starting January 1st of this year, I started hiring W-2 employees. And during the application process for my PPP loan, my bank would only accept the paperwork basically for my owner's draws for the previous year, 2019. They would not accept any of my payroll costs for my current employees. So I guess my question is, I have no idea now what to do with the funding that I received, because now I'm not sure if I qualify for the easy form, because I could use those funds myself since they were based on only my salary, or if I need to use them for my employees, because in my 2020 tax returns, I will have payroll costs.
Let me unmute myself, sorry. So first question I have for you is, how is your business structured? Do you file on a Schedule C? Are you an S corporation? How are you set up?
Schedule C.
Okay, so you are a Schedule C with employees. So you have 2 pieces of this that you need to look at. Even though your PPP funds were only based off your profits for last year, and so that's what they used to determine your 2.5 times calculation, you also have employees, so you can qualify under both of these. So you really have an option of how you use these funds based on the guidelines. You can use the funds, part of it, to pay your employees and have that piece of it forgiven, but you can also use it to pay yourself and have that piece of it forgiven based on the Schedule C.
Awesome. Okay.
So your biggest, who did you get your PPP funding through?
New Tech is the name of the the place.
Are they a bank or are they like a finance?
No, I think they're a finance firm that was hired by my bank.
Okay, and is it NU or NEW?
Let me look it up right now.
Sorry, I'm Googling it. I've not heard of that one, so I want to make sure.
Yeah, NEWTEK, Small Business Finance.
Okay, there they are. So, do you have a contact there, or was everything done online and you didn't really have a contact that you spoke with?
It was mostly done online, but I do have a contact.
Okay, so my best advice is going to be to reach out to your contact and ask them, because as I said, when it comes to the documentation, each lender, we have guidelines from the SBA, we have the guidelines, but that's really all it is. Like, the actual implementation of the forgiveness process is going to highly depend on each bank and what they're specifically looking at and looking for. So I would start by reaching out to your contact and asking them, like, as a self-employed individual with employees, will you guys allow me to utilize this for both? And really take a look at what their answer is, and then base it off of that. Once you get that answer from them, I would be more than happy to jump on a call with you and kind of walk through what their answer is and then discuss exactly what that looks like for you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. All right, do you have any other questions before I put you back on mute, Lorena?
No, go ahead and mute me.
All right. Does anybody else have a question? Pop it into the chat box or the Q&A box. Does anybody else have a question that they would like to come on live and have me answer for you? I'm going to give you guys a moment to see if anybody wants to come on live. I don't have any other questions. If anybody on Facebook has any questions, go ahead and pop those in and I will make sure to answer those as well. I think the biggest thing here, guys, is really just making sure that you're looking at the guidelines, looking at these applications. Again, if you can qualify for the easy form, absolutely 100% go that route. This other one, it's a government form. It's more of a headache than it needs to be. So on that, I really want to honor your guys' time. I know we have some people on the East Coast that popped in, and so it's like 9 o'clock your time, which I know for me is like well past my bedtime. So I appreciate you hopping on. Again, if you have questions, if you want to schedule an appointment to talk about this or really anything around your business accounting needs, go ahead and send me a text. I will make sure that we get an email out to you tomorrow. I know a couple of you have already popped in. Rebecca, Tammy, I see you guys. Tammy, I think you asked if I have clients outside of Colorado. I do. So my license, I'm an enrolled agent, very, very similar to a CPA. However, my license allows me to work within any state in the US. So I do have clients nationwide. I mean, I'm coast to coast. I've got clients in California, New York, Florida, and pretty much everywhere in between. So that is not a concern as far as that piece of it goes, Tammy. So I do see that you sent in your email. I will make sure my assistant Terry gets an email out to you in the morning with the scheduling link. Same for you, Rebecca. I don't see any other questions popping in. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to let you guys get back to your day. I'm going to get back to my evening. I hope everybody has a great night. And we will follow me on Facebook, guys. Amanda Kendall, follow my business page. I'm constantly posting updates about this and keeping everybody informed. That really is my biggest. Robert, you popped in. Can I get it as well? Is that you wanting to come on and ask a question, or what are you? I'm not following what you're asking for there. You may have asked something up above that I didn't answer, and I apologize. Lorena, I just saw your text come in, so we'll make sure to get that out to you as well. Harlan, thanks for popping on as always. You always fill in some gaps where I may overlook something, so I greatly appreciate your time. Yes, so Robert, if you will text to that number that's right there on that screen, that's 720-239-2457. If you'll shoot me a text to that with your email or your phone number, we will be in touch tomorrow with everybody that asks for some information there. And then I will also, I'll make a note here, and we should have your email from your registration for the webinar, and so we can reach out to you as well through that. So I hope you guys all have a great evening. I want to wish all of you the absolute best with anything related to the PPP, with anything related to your business. I am like truly passionate when it comes to entrepreneurs and businesses and really just helping them succeed. So if I can ever be of any service to you, I greatly appreciate you just reaching out and letting me know. If I can answer a quick question for you, whatever that is. Robert, I see your text just came in, so we'll make sure we get some information out to you as well. Everybody have an absolutely great evening, and we will be in touch with those of you that asked for it. Take care, guys.